It happened just days after the U.S. restarted strikes against Iran. The president at the time saying this.
They want to take out the U.S. leader, me. I'm on every list.
What Trump didn't say was that just hours later, while he prepared to depart the NATO summit in Turkey, the decision was made to secretly move him off Air Force One onto a separate plane, concealing him in a catering truck. A senior administration official telling ABC News the decision was based on intelligence that an Iranian terror cell had sneaked into Turkey with a shoulder-fired missile, and that they had information about Trump's whereabouts. That secret plan, of which only a few top officials were aware, meant that the president wasn't actually on board Air Force One with the press and senior White House officials. Instead, those on board were effectively acting as a decoy, unaware of the fact that Trump was now on the smaller plane, with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and a handful of aides, including Walt Nauta, Dan Scavino, and Natalie Harp. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, along with Communications Director Stephen Chung, were aware of the ruse but remained on Air Force One despite the threat. When Air Force One and the smaller plane with the president on board landed in the UK, Trump sneaked back onto Air Force One as if nothing had happened. Trump now shrugging off concerns about the threat posed to those who remained aboard the plane he was supposed to be on.
I think actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk. I think it was at greater risk because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for.
A source later telling ABC News that the president's reaction to the ruse was that he loved it. I'm joined now by the Washington Post's Dan Lamothe, who helped break this story to the public with his reporting this week. And Dan, you just heard us report that the president loved it, but no one would have known about this if it wasn't for your reporting. How did that tip come in?
Yeah, I mean, we had an individual who thought this should be in the public square, was surprised that days had passed and there had been no public acknowledgement. So the conversation really starts there.
And the White House is clearly taking this very seriously this week because it hadn't come out before, because you revealed all these incredible details, and yet it was based on intelligence that we now learn wasn't credible or wasn't highly credible to the administration.
That's right. I think the Secret Service was really in a tough spot that particular day. They got this tip from Israel, obviously seemed like a grave concern. They didn't have high confidence in that information, certainly in the moment and after the fact, and they kind of were left, I think, trying to choose the least bad option there.
And to keep the president safe, of course. But the threat apparently was from a shoulder-fired missile, which can be very dangerous and very difficult to find, that someone got into Turkey and was targeting the president of the United States. So they just did what they could.
That's right. And I mean, there are people who thought that tip was, pulling that off would have been very difficult. There were tens of thousands of Turkish forces involved in protecting that summit.
And just finally, obviously they left the press on the plane, the press pool, and the White House and senior officials, including Marco Rubio. The press has been criticized in a way, like, look, you take a risk, but we do know we take a risk. But we take that risk because we believe you're on the safest plane in the world with the president on board, and he wasn't this time.
That's all true. And then I think the other piece here is there's an expectation when you're traveling and taking these trips that you're with the principal, you're with the individual that you're covering. Otherwise, what's the point, especially if something goes wrong? If either of those planes go down, and there's confusion about where the president is, that puts you in a whole nother universe.
But that Air Force One was really a decoy at that point.
Yes.
Okay, great reporting, Dan. We really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.